week in Iowa, the immigration crisis with Congresswoman Cindy Axzidi. Then, what's the Republican plan to win back seats in 2020? Plus, the impact of a shakeup at DHS on the children's mental health system, and a major summit for Iowans of faith that's attracting some big names. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us here on This Week in Iowa. I'm Sabrina Ahmed, and we are starting off our show with Congresswoman Cindy Axzidi. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here.
Always good to be here.
You have been on quite the sweep of multiple counties, speaking with voters. So tell me, what's the #1 thing you're hearing from Iowans on this trip?
The #1 thing that I continue to hear from Iowans is the need for affordable quality health care. And as a matter of fact, I've spent extensive amount of time working on the cost of prescription drugs. And so as one of our visits yesterday was to the Bedford Drug Pharmacy and talking with the owner and pharmacist. And it was a great example of what we're seeing in our rural communities from a health care perspective, but just in general, the crisis that we're seeing from health care, affordable quality health care across this country. I hear a lot about that. Certainly, we want to make sure that we're touching base with our flood victims, and we've been consistently doing that, as well as looking at ways where we can help build economic prosperity for our district. One of my stops yesterday was in Mount Ayr, where they had the Iowa Rural Development Economic folks there and other rural economic development organizations to talk about the issues that we're facing. So I'm making sure that I'm there listening to those issues, then I'm taking those concerns back with me to Washington and actually crafting policy that will help those communities.
So as you mentioned a bit, the flood victims in the state of Iowa, on the western part of the state, many of those people are your constituents. So what do you believe Congress, do you think Congress is doing enough? Do you think the bill that passed last week with the funding is enough for flood victims?
Well, first and foremost, I'm thrilled that we were able to pass that flood package. And as a matter of fact, it contained $3 billion that I secured specifically for the Midwest floods, plus 2 additional amendments of almost $1 billion total for federal highway transportation needs, as well as emergency watershed program to help with debris from our rivers. So we secured about $4 billion successfully just for the Midwest floods. So we have good resources coming. I'm going to tell you, though, it's not going to be enough. When you look at disasters of this kind, you know, they cost a heck of a lot of money. A lot of that will be used by the Corps to repair our levees, and as a matter of fact, I just got a text from the Lieutenant Colonel this morning saying that they've repaired another breach, so that's positive news, and we're continuing to move forward to address those breaches of our levees, as well as look at how we're going to make folks whole. One of the things that I was also able to get into that package was statutory language to cover the uninsured grain in bins, which is great for our farmers because unfortunately they had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of grain sitting in those bins that wasn't going to be covered, and we needed to make sure that that happened. So I'm really happy with the package we were able to put together, but it's a long road. It's a long road to recovery. We've got to take advantage of community development block grants and things like that, and we also need to look at those communities to see what we can do when we help rebuild them that looks to the future and make sure that they have opportunity.
Last month, you signed a letter to Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue telling him that Iowa farmers also need direct payments as they have been impacted by the ongoing trade war. And in addition to flooding, they have a trade war. So have you received any response from him, and what has he said?
You know, we're consistently talking with the administration and crafting letters to let them know our concern. You know, we didn't hear anything back from Secretary Perdue for that particular letter. I do try and keep in touch with him. I've talked with him and the Vice President, amongst others, a trade ambassador, about the issues that Iowans are facing. Certainly in Iowa, I think we're taking an exceptional blow from this administration's trade wars. First, it started in our manufacturing sector and with our producers, and now our farmers have been feeling the brunt of the pain for months on end. They can barely take it, quite honestly. So we've got to get this resolved, and I'm pushing the administration to make sure that they do that.
I'd like to switch gears to kind of a hot topic nationally, and then if we have time, we'll come back to a couple of other Iowa-centric ideas. But recently, many of your colleagues visited the southern border and saw some of those migrant detention centers. Do you have any plans to visit those, and why or why not?
Well, as a matter of fact, I just got a text this morning from my colleague, Representative Escobar, who's in El Paso. I had called her yesterday to do a check-in on some of the latest things that she'd seen during her tour. So I'm trying to stay on top of as much as possible here in Iowa while I'm serving our communities as much as possible handle what's happening on the border. Certainly, if I have an opportunity to visit the border, that's something that I will do. I want to make sure that we look at this very holistically. We all know that we need secure borders, but we absolutely need to make sure that we treat people humanely and with dignity. And I'll tell you what, as a mother and as an American, I'm really disappointed in what we're hearing from what's happening in the detention centers, including reports from administrators within this administration that are saying that, you know, they're understaffed and they don't have the resources that they need, and it's really not a good situation. So there are official reports stating that we've got a crisis down there and we need to address it.
There was funding passed to hopefully help alleviate the problem, but it's also a systemic issue with Border Patrol agents having just a culture of negativity toward these people who are in their care. How do you fix that?
Well, we passed a $4.6 billion appropriations bill to help folks with this issue, and so the majority of that money will go towards helping women, children, families with legal services, food, medical supplies, all the things that we heard about. Children were in diapers that were soiled. Diapers are part of that. All of these things that we would just normally rely on as being just a regular part of our lives. And so there's a lot of humanitarian aid that's out there, including, as I mentioned, that legal assistance. We do need to make sure that we are working with those folks that are working those detention centers and that do work border security to make sure that they're doing so in the way that we should be in this country, which is respect to others. Every single person in this country, you know, really, with the exception of our Native Americans, comes from someplace else. And that's the beauty of this country. The fabric that we've built is the difference that we all bring to the table. We need to be open to make sure that those seeking refuge in our country who legally can do so have that opportunity, and we need to make sure that those who are working our borders are treating people appropriately. To not give children and families what they need, to tear families apart, is unacceptable. That's not who we are as Americans.
Congresswoman Cindy Axzidi, thank you for your time. Short break, we'll be right back.
He was jailed for abusing their baby.
My sister had broken legs, broken arms.
They found lacerations inside the mouth.
Now they're dating again.
When you went away, the injuries stopped.
I don't know anything about that.
If he did do anything, he didn't mean to hurt her.
This doesn't happen from playing patty cake. This suggests that the baby has been shaken or tossed.
Next, Dr. Phil.
Monday at 4 on Local 5.
How do you win over fans? You give them something they love, something no one else can, something they can't get enough of. And then you give them more. Hurry in to see why Ram has the most loyal half-ton pickup owners during the Ram Summer Clearance event.
Now get 20% off MSRP on select 2019 Ram 1500 Classic models in dealer stock.
So now, Dish has over 80,000 on-demand movies and shows. 80,000. Why? I mean, it would take you years to get through 80,000. Thing is, it's not about 80,000. It's about one. That one movie you saw that one time on a first date with that one girl. That's why.
Dish. Tuned in to you.
From the farm towns to the downtowns to the suburbs, a common feeling lives inside of you and me. And no matter where we go, Central Iowa's in our souls, and it's what keeps us connected to this place. And I love living local. It's the only kind of beer I want to breathe. We are Iowa, and it's everything to me.
From the capital city, you're watching This Week in Iowa with Sabrina Ahmed, getting to the heart of what's happening in Iowa politics.
Welcome back, everyone. We are joined now by Jeff Kaufman, the chair of the Republican Party of Iowa. Jeff, thank you so much for being here.
Good to be back again.
Okay, so we are less than 6 months away from the Iowa caucuses. it.
Yeah, I know. Thanks for ruining my day.
But since you have an incumbent on the ticket, the Republican caucuses aren't particularly in the spotlight. So how is the Republican Party approaching the caucuses in 2020?
To be honest with you, exactly like we approached them in 2016. You're right. It doesn't look like the president's going to have any competition, any viable competition here this year. But we're going to go through the entire caucuses as we have before. We're going to be training our folks to give transparent, efficient, and credible results. We're going to be having a straw poll, taking a vote. In many ways, we're doing this currently because that helps us to build our infrastructure for the general election. At the same time, we also are building this for 2024. There are forces that want what we have, and we want to make sure that we prove once again to the rest of the country that Iowa is capable of putting this together in a top-notch way.
Is there any fear that because you have an incumbent who's a Republican, that there might be less excitement out there because you already have someone on the ticket who everyone's voted for before?
A fair question, but you know, for instance, the Democratic debates, the other night when every single candidate, every one of them raised their hand when they said who wants to provide taxpayer-funded health care to illegal immigrants, when every single one of them raised their hand, that's a better rousing speech than anything I could ever give. So I really think seeing a group of self-proclaimed socialists, which is what they are, by their own admission, traveling around this state pretending like they understand farming, pretending like they understand rural Iowa, I think that actually builds up and jazzes and energizes our base. So actually, I guess I should thank Kamala Harris and a few others for that, because they're sure making my job a lot easier.
Let's talk congressional races and the U.S. Senate race as well. So we'll start with the Senate race. Senator Joni Ernst has more challengers since we last spoke, including Teresa Greenfield, a familiar face to many Iowans. How do you see the opponent to Joni Ernst, that race shaping up?
A Southern Iowa, a small-town, rural lady that was the first combat veteran in the United States Senate versus basically a real estate executive from Polk County attempting to come off as a farmer, but not really. I love it. And there's one number that matters in the Joni Ernst race, 57% approval rating. Absolutely record-shattering. I don't spend a lot of nights worrying about whether Joni Ernst is going to go back again, because I think she's going to get a tremendous amount of Democrats backing her.
Let's talk District 3. Cindy Axzidi was just on the show, but she has challengers, including the person who she beat, David Young. And Zach Nunn has announced his listening tour. He says he wants the job as well. So how do you see that race shaping up, with a former congressman going against a state senator, potentially going up against an incumbent Democrat?
I think, first of all, David Young lost one county, and just barely. And so, when we look at the tactical strategy here, bettering your position in Polk County a bit, that's what it's going to take for David Young to win. And to be quite honest, David Young visited every single county, all 16 of them, every month. Cindy Axzidi, hit and miss. She gets out there. I don't even know if she's been to all 16 counties. Talks a good game.
I think she has.
But
to be fair to Cindy Axzidi.
But in reality, she's not even coming close to all 16 counties every month. She was delayed response to the floods. I've talked to hundreds of people on the Missouri River that are very, very upset at the way that the presidential candidates played games with that funding, and how she did not say one word against that. I like the optics on that race.
Well, as she spoke about as well, she did help to get that funding passed. So,
I suppose better late than never.
Let's talk about the State House real quick. Democrats want to take control again. Do you see that happening?
You know, all politics is local. So these State House, these legislative races are what are crucial. We are probably having in the House, we're probably having one of the best recruiting years in the last 20 years that I've been following this. The state Senate, no, they're going to hold. The Democrats do not have a prayer of taking over the Iowa State Senate.
Jeff Kaufman.
Thanks.
Thanks. Always a pleasure to have you. Short break. We'll be right back.
This station seeks groups that regularly send information about work opportunities to job applicants, or that have applicants to refer. If your group would like to receive notification of job vacancies at our station, contact us by U.S. mail, email, or by calling 515-457-9645. Individuals interested in employment in the broadcast industry are encouraged to visit weareiowa.com for a list of current job openings. Nexstar Broadcasting Companies are an equal opportunity employer.
In every community, young people are proving their abilities to lead through accomplishment in the classroom and beyond. At Mediacom, we're proud to recognize these outstanding individuals by awarding world-class scholarships. By investing in these young leaders and their educations, we believe that we're creating a more promising future for everyone. Congratulations to each and every winner. Mediacom, powering the future.
Did you know that your child is building critical life skills every time they play? That's the genius of play. Research shows that playtime helps kids develop cognitive, physical, social, and emotional skills, boosts creativity, reduces stress, and nurtures family bonds. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that children spend at least 60 minutes daily in unstructured and fun physical activities. To help raise a healthier and happier generation, visit thegeniusofplay.org.
At Local 5 on your side means answers to your questions.
And we're just doing the stories that the community wants us to do, to empower you with something as a viewer that you can move forward with.
What drives these people to go above and beyond and be exceptional Iowans? That's stuff we can all use in our own lives.
To be able to be that line of connection for people is huge to them. And they can reach out to Local 5 and they're going to get answers.
We are Iowa and it's everything to me.
You're watching This Week in Iowa, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Iowa.
Welcome back. We're joined now by Peggy Huppert, who leads a mental health advocacy group here in Iowa, talking about the children's mental health system that officially launched on July 1st.
Right.
Thank you so much for being here.
You bet.
So tell us, what is included in this new mental health system? What does it mean?
Well, it's significant because up until now, Iowa was one of only 4 states in the country that did not have a children's mental health system. And what that means is children were certainly being provided services, but there was no guarantee. Depending on where you lived and kind of the connections you had and who you knew would depend on what kind of services you would get. So we wanted a system that said every Iowa child is entitled to these certain systems and define them and make people accountable for making sure that those services are actually provided and they're paid for by the payers. And that's what now takes effect July 1.
Okay, so do you feel like it went okay? Did it go off without a hitch?
Well, the governor signed it on May 1.
Right.
And now the real work begins to implement it. I mean, it's a policy on paper. It's in the Iowa Code. But it's up to all of us to make sure that it's actually funded and implemented the way we intended.
When I spoke to the governor, oh gosh, at the end of session, she said, the children's mental health system is being funded. Don't think that it's not. Do you agree with her? Do you believe that there's enough funding to it?
Well, it's being funded through Medicaid.
Right.
There are other sources of money being dedicated in various ways to children's mental health through education and the judiciary. So there certainly is money being spent, but the problem is there has not been a system. And actually funding the system, which is now the responsibility of the regions and funded by the counties, that's really the issue. Because there's been no state money appropriated to fund the actual system. DHS is in charge of making sure that all this happens. And we have a state board that's supposed to be overseeing it. But she has to reappoint the board members, and then they have to be confirmed by the Senate, and that has not happened yet.
You mentioned DHS being in charge of all of this, but just recently the director of DHS, Jerry Foxhoven, was asked to resign by the governor, and that was right before the launch of the new children's mental health system, and among other things that happened on July 1 with DHS. So did that put a hitch in it at all?
Well, it did from our perspective. Whenever you have a top person leave suddenly, it creates a gap. And compounding that is that Rick Schultz, who is the head of the division that oversees mental health and disability services and has a lot of institutional knowledge. He led the complex needs work group. He was a key part of the children's board. He's retiring next Friday. So we're losing 2 top key people. And I'm just unsure of the direction at this point.
Have you reached out to the governor to have that conversation?
Well, we actually met with the governor's office yesterday, and we talked about funding specifically, and I feel that they are still very committed to that. In terms of leadership at DHS, I'm not sure, but we are hopeful that, I know it continues to be a priority for the governor.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you very much for being here. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Short break. We'll be right back.
Hey, Central Iowa. Crossroads Shooting Sports is your premier indoor shooting range. With certified staff, we take your education, safety, and security seriously. Whether it's your first time holding a gun or you're an experienced shooter, Crossroads is a place for you. With a state-of-the-art indoor range, full-service training and conference facilities, and complete retail shop, Crossroads Shooting Sports is here to meet your needs. Visit crossroadshooting.com to learn about events, training courses, and more. Crossroads Shooting Sports, where responsibility and skill meet.
5-time Grammy winner, 30 million albums sold, kicks off an epic holiday event.
I love it so much.
With her favorite holiday picks.
Work it. Smells just like Christmas.
And best of all,
guess what? You guys are all going home with all of these things.
Plus, Todd loves his holiday traditions, but hates this.
It's for people who have money who want to try to act like they're bougie.
And designer Jeremiah Brent brings one family a little piece of home.
Monday morning at 9.
On Local 5.
Congratulations to the Local 5 political team, awarded a regional Emmy for program Medicine in the Making. And congratulations to Local 5's Elias Johnson, awarded a regional Emmy for his work as a video journalist. To view these and other local stories you won't see anywhere else, go to weareiowa.com.
McKenna Hassey here. I think I'll be the fastest driver at the Rockin' Prevention Golf Classic at Blank Golf Course, Friday, July 19th. Come on out and help some kids and see if you can keep up with me. The 13th Annual Rockin' Prevention Golf Classic at Blank Golf Course, Friday, July 19th with an 11 a.m. shotgun start. Registration starts at 9:30 a.m., dinner at 5 with a really fast and terrific speaker. Have fun, help some kids. Rockin' Prevention.
You're watching This Week in Iowa, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Iowa.
Welcome back, everyone. We are finishing off our show with Bob Vander Plaats, who is the president of the Iowa Family Leader. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's a privilege to be here with you.
So we are less than a week away from your Family Leadership Summit happening in West Des Moines. Talk to me about, well, you just secured Senator Joni Ernst and Governor Kim Reynolds to speak at the event. It has been such a spectacle in previous years, having all of the presidential candidates. I still remember 2016, I believe, 15, leading up to the Iowa caucuses, coming to your event and having every single Republican running for president on the stage. This is a bit of a different take, because the presidential candidates won't be on your stage.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt it's a different year because we're not in the caucus season, so such like the Democrats are in a caucus season at this point. But we've never been partisan. It's never been about Republican or been about Democrat. It's been about principles over politics. We really want the principles that inspire us versus the politics that divide us. So all the candidates, even the big forums, the big leadership summits that we've had that you've referenced, we've always wanted them to talk about their principles, their values, what motivates them, what inspires them, and what can we see real leadership in action being played out.
Why do you think it's important to have big names like Tim Scott, Tom Cotton, James Lankford, others coming to Iowa all on the same stage?
Well, first of all, it brings people. People want to hear them. And so Senator Scott and Senator Lankford, they're all about racial reconciliation. Here's an African American from South Carolina and a white person from Oklahoma, both serving in the U.S. Senate, trying to learn about each other, their upbringings, and having dialogue and reaching out to the African American community and to the white community for Senator Scott of why do we have more in common than we have that separates us. So we think it's very important to have that kind of dialogue. Also a message of how do we restore civility in very divisive times. And so that'll be part of the messaging as well at this year's Leadership Summit.
You did reach out to some of the Democratic presidential candidates to be on the stage as well, and they all declined your invitation. Were you surprised?
No, I wasn't really surprised. I wish I would say, yeah, I was shocked. But I wasn't really surprised. But I believe it's a missed opportunity. I know Congressman Axzidi was just on your show as well. She and I talked as we met each other. And she said, too, she goes, I really applaud you for reaching out. Because when candidates are saying, we have a vision for unity for this country, it's my faith that inspires me. Well, let's come to a stage that might not be your stage, might not even be a likely stage for you. But if you're going to cast a vision of unity, let's do it to all of America, not part of America. It's not good to just go to fragments of America with your message if you want to be president of the United States. If it's your faith that inspires you, let's have an open dialogue about that faith, because that could motivate other people's faith and inspire other people's faith. But it comes through discussion and real dialogue. And quite frankly, that's the heart of the Leadership Summit.
So what do you believe, how do you believe faith will be at the center of this 2020 presidential campaign?
Well, we'll see. I mean, of how it's going to get played out. What we do know is that Donald Trump, his administration, Kellyanne Conway, Trump has been at our leadership summits, Kellyanne Conway's been at our leadership summits, several of his members of his administration have. They talk to us. That's the first part of having, you know, a relationship or a dialogue. You got to be able to talk to one another. So I'm not sure how faith is going to get played out, but what I do know is that Americans are looking for something that's bigger and higher than just politics, and that, we believe, is our faith.
Bob Vander Plaats, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
It's not what we ride that defines us. It's what happens along the way. We may not know where the ride will take us, but one thing's for sure. With the Law Tigers, you never ride alone. If you're injured in a motorcycle accident, call 1-800-LAW-TIGERS, Iowa's motorcycle lawyers.
It takes years of hard work to reach an elite level. Every day, practicing and honing skills, in every challenge, staying focused on the goal. For Local 5, it's being the best at telling local stories that matter to you. We're honored to celebrate student athletes on and off of the field. And we're excited for what's to come in the 20th year of Friday Night Blitz here on Local 5. We are Iowa Sports.
Hi, I'm Meredith Vieira, and I'm here to tell you about my new game show. It's a really funny word game with lots of celebrities. What?
Sorry, Meredith. You have to do it in 25 words or less.
And the grand prize each day. Really? Are you kidding me?
Those are the rules.
This is ridiculous. I'm out of here. I'll see you in the fall.
25 words or less. Premiering this fall with your host, Meredith Vieira.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
Doctors. Batatas. Ismail? Yes. David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, thanks to meet you.
This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much.
Can you banish my bat wing?
I'm put you through some different exercises, and I think you're gonna like it.
And, D.I., why would you do that? The doctors.
Monday at 3 on Local 5.
Thank you so much for joining us here on This Week in Iowa. We'll see you next Sunday.